sanctions, austerity measures, and all that. And of course, in the East, the big thing, of course, is Russia invaded what? Crimea. Now, is that true? Did Russia invade Crimea?
Invade is the term that's being contested.
That's the term being used in the media, right? Is it true?
No.
Well, we have.
Well, let's hear from this gentleman. It's not true.
No. They were kind of invited in.
Yeah, they were invited in, but they also were entitled to 25,000 troops in the Crimea under the accord with Ukraine to protect the naval base. And everyone thinks they only had 16,000 there before. And whether it was, really the indigenous people who may be trained by Russia, or was it actually, but no one showed me a photograph of Russians pouring into Crimea. They didn't have to. The Crimeans very much wanted to retreat. Now, why is it, and I'll finish with this, why is it that the Crimeans wanted to be part of Russia rather than Ukraine? Well, one reason is that Ukraine is a god-awful mess, okay? Another reason is that they get double the pension that they would have gotten from Ukraine. So some of these, some matter-of-fact reasons. But mostly, they feel an affinity for Russia because the Crimea was part of Russia ever since we started our nation here in the late 1700s. Catherine the Great established Russian rule down to and including the Crimea. Well, how, you might ask, did Crimea end up as part of the Ukraine? Anybody know the answer to that?
Khrushchev was a Ukrainian and he put it in Ukraine.
I'm sorry?
Khrushchev was a Ukrainian and he gave it to Ukraine.
Yeah, right. Some of these things are pretty simple. After Stalin died, 53, Khrushchev became the first party secretary, right? And he needed a lot of support because he wasn't a Stalin, And so he's like, I can get Ukrainian support. Let's give, that's a good idea. Let's give Crimea to Ukraine, make all my supporters happy. Now, why did nobody take note of that? Because it didn't matter. They're all dancing to Moscow's tune, whether it was the Ukraine or whether it was the Federated Republic of Russia or Uzbekistan. They're all, part of the 15 Soviet Socialist republics. They're all part of the USSR. Whether the Crimea is part of Ukraine or part of Russia, didn't matter then. Matters now. Okay. The reason I adduce this history is because it's incredibly relevant. In his major speech on the 18th of March, Putin said, a lot of the Crimeans have said to me, we felt when we woke up on that morning in 1991, when all of a sudden we were part of a different country, of Ukraine, a separate independent country, we felt we had been thrown over the border like a sack of potatoes. And that's how they felt. So, now, when Khrushchev simply said that we will give Crimea to Ukraine, did he have a plebiscite or a referendum, or did he ask the Crimeans whether they wanted to be part of Russia or Ukraine?
No.
Hell no. I mean, that's not the way we did things in those days. You signed a piece of paper, and all of a sudden, boom, Crimeans are part of Ukraine. Okay. Now, Putin, to his credit, at least went through the motions of a referendum. People say, well, it was staged. Of course, well, staged. They knew that they're mostly Russian speakers. A lot of them are ethnic Russians there. And as I talked about the retirement benefits and everything else, they didn't want to be part of this failed state. They wanted to be part of Russia, so it was a done deal. Now, that's a stretch to call that a Soviet invasion, Soviet expansionism of its dominion, its empire. So my point is simply this, that when you get people like Anne-Marie Slaughter, who used to be the head of policy planning, and I'm probably repeating myself now, but when she's saying, oh, we got to fix this, and the way to do it is make war on Syria to teach them a lesson, you got a whole bunch of people who never served in the military who don't know what war is like, and our only savior will be the military and the honest intelligence folks that I'm proud to say prevented the war on Syria in early September of this year. when we told the president, look, John Kerry said 35 times on the 30th of August, we know it's Bashar al-Assad that did those chemical things. He didn't know. And the preponderance of the evidence now is that it wasn't the Syrian government, it was the rebels. And Cy Hirsch has a wonderful story on that, two wonderful stories, but you're not going to see it in the New York Times. You're not even going to see it in the New Yorker, where Cy Hirsch usually writes. You have to go to the London Review of Books, or you get on the web and watch it. Now, just a final word here. I think that at play here is what we saw on the part of Westmoreland and what we see on Obama and others about this the sole exceptional, the sole indispensable country in the world we can do, and we're sort of ordained divinely to do what we want. And if you look at Iraq, you look at Afghanistan, Libya, Somalia, you can see what we're doing, and that's because those other countries and those other people not only don't look like us, most of them, but they're dispensable by, they're by definition dispensable. And so when I hear the President and others finish up their speeches with something that is really anti-biblical, you can look through the entire Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures. Nowhere will you see a request or an order from Yahweh or Jesus to call on them to bless you. God bless you. God bless you. And so, that, in that sense, it's anti-biblical. But when I hear Obama and the others say, well, and God bless America, I'm thinking, well, if it's the America that Westmoreland was talking about, if it's the America that unsensitive people here in Richmond are talking about, then, I don't know how God feels about that, those of you who believe in a God. I think she's really pissed off when she hears it. And what I would say is that he should end his speeches by saying, may God bless the whole world, including America. And I'll finish on that note. Thank you. Time for questions, yep.
Yeah, but where do you see things heading in Ukraine?
Well, I'm not as alarmist as a lot of other people. Putin's got the high cards.
Right.
He doesn't have to do anything. He might have 40,000 troops on the border. That's his right. I'd like to see an image, a photo of that. It would be nice if they shared that, if they have it. There's no reason for them not to. There are all kinds of satellites flying around. So I think that Putin will watch very carefully what happens in eastern Ukraine. If bedlam ensues, then the bets will be off. But as bad as it is to have 5 people killed yesterday, and maybe more today, that's not that's something short of a major battle. And I think that most of the Ukrainian troops, or a lot of them, will do what the ones did last week, defect with their equipment, with their armored personnel carriers, or be surrounded by Eastern Ukrainians, who in one case surrounded 13 of these armored personnel carriers and asked the men to get out, took their ammunition from them, put them in a bus and sent them back to the Ukrainian army base and kept the weapon, kept the armored personnel carriers. So I think, if I just can't see why Kerry and Obama are not smart enough to know that when you're in a hole, the way to get out is not to keep digging, but that's what they're doing. I just hope that the Geneva Agreement of the 17th of April can serve as a basis for adult people getting together and saying, look, both sides need to cool it. And I see the probability of that happening. As you probably know, the U.S. sent 150 airborne troops to Latvia, 150 airborne troops to Lithuania, 150 airborne troops to Estonia, and 150 airborne troops to Poland. So that makes 600 airborne troops. I mean, you know, symbolism is something, but you need more than 600 troops if you're going to have a, you know, convincing symbol. Just as with these sanctions, you know, you make it difficult for some Russians or some Ukrainians to travel. Well, those are going to change the world. I don't think so. There are very limited possibilities for the U.S. and the West Europeans to do real painful sanctions for the USSR, except for Russia, because Russia has the high cards, it has natural gas, it has the things that Europe really needs. So I think I'm hopeful that things will calm down, but you know, it's really hard with the rhetoric being so. Lavrov got up today, and apparently Kerry yesterday had reamed RT, Russia Today. So it's a terrible propaganda machine, you know, all this stuff. And Lavrov addressed that directly. He said, "What do you mean? You know, RT is we're spreading the news. CNN, you know, the rest of them. What about them?" So it's getting sort of almost adolescent in the way that they're criticising each other. Yes, please.
You put a lot of responsibility on the gladiatorial women, and you think that Kerry is trying to impress them. My impression is that the problem with American foreign policy is that the women are trying to impress the military. That the National Security Office is full of military. Even CNN has been full of military at various times. And there is this sort of gung-ho, we've got it, therefore we've got to use it. And I think that and Kerry, you know, testosterone dripping out of his ear holes, is trying to keep up with the four-star general.
Well, you know, the military certainly has a lot of influence on people like Anne-Marie Slaughter. If you look at her article 2 days ago where she says we got to bomb Syria, she's got military type detail that she could only have gotten from the likes of General Jack Keane or other neocon generals. But the most important story about the military is that when Obama had been persuaded by these very tough women and these very tough men and the neocons to do battle with Syria, the ships were there, the cruise missiles were ready. What changed his mind? Anybody know?
Kerry flubbed and said,
Pardon?
Kerry flubbed and basically left the door open for the Russians to say that they would take in the...
I didn't hear the first couple words. Kerry Club, you say?
Kerry flubbed when he made this kind of impromptu remark about Russia or some outside forces taking in
The chemical thing?
Right. And they
you
took advantage of that.
Oh, who else was...
And then Obama got a midnight call for a visit from...
Yeah. Well, you know, that's not the way I see it. What happened, in my view, was that after Kerry said 35 times that it's going to be an unbelievable... What he said was that we know Bashar al-Assad has done these chemical attacks. General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, went to the president and said, with all due respect to Secretary Kerry, we don't know. As a matter of fact, we think it was the rebels. And the British have a sample of the sarin gas that was used, and it's not the kind that the Syrian government has in its stocks. And meanwhile, some of my old friends in the CIA went to their superiors and said, this is a crock. We're not going to do Iraq again. All right? That's gutsy. That's hopeful. They said, we're not going to do Iraq again. So if you want to put out a statement, don't call it an intelligence assessment, okay? And you'll see that a unique genre of product came out. It was a government assessment because the intelligence guys were going to cry havoc if they made it an intelligence assessment, okay? So they got to Dempsey and they got to the White House, and Obama, I don't know if he's paying attention or not, but he got the message, okay? Now, how do I know all that? Well,